When you look at the Bible, I think one of the first things that causes problems for many people within the contemporary context is just how concrete it is, how focused it is upon particular realities within the world. Now, we tend to think within the modern world in a very scientific way of thinking of the world as fundamentally particles and matter governed by abstract mathematical laws. But when you read the Bible, there is significance given to specific things within the world and the way that they relate to each other. Sun, moon, the animals, different species of animals. There's a difference between the bull and the goat. There's a difference between the different types of birds, the raven and the dove. Each one of these things represents some significance that suggests that the world is not just a reservoir of resources, nor is it a matter of interchangeable matter or stuff governed by abstract mathematical laws, but there is a choreography of nature, that God has set the creation in motion and has placed humankind within it. Now, our struggle is to overcome our sense of a world where particularity has been downplayed. So this has happened in a number of different ways. We think about money that renders things fungible and commensurable. We can put a value on things, and through that value that we put on things, we can rate its value relative to other things. And all these things can be placed on a continuum of value. Likewise, when we think about science, an atom over here is exchangeable with an atom over here. Things on particles on different sides of the universe, they're fundamentally the same. The idea that there should be a particularly charged significance to a location, to particular persons, the idea that God should achieve his purposes through a carpenter from Nazareth, it just seems very hard to believe from a modern way of viewing the world, a way of viewing the world that uproots us from particularity. Also, many of the objects that we see, if we look around us, if we look at a cup on a table, if we look at the table itself, if we look at the clothes that we're wearing, there are many thousands of versions of these things. And these things are in many ways uprooted from their presence within the world, uprooted from a deeper grounding in nature and reality. They're orphaned objects, as I tend to think about them. In the past, you could look to the mountains or to the hills and see soil that had fed your ancestors for generations prior to your coming into the world. That understanding of your rootedness within creation is not something that we have in the same way today. So in many ways, we try and overcome this through ideas, through alerting ourselves to our rootedness through ideas. But these are things that are deeply part of us, our experience of interchangeable realities, that we live in much the same way in all parts of the world now. When we have electricity, when we have modern technology, when we have forms of architecture, forms of life, forms of society that are very similar from place to place, it's difficult to have a sense of our rootedness within the world. It's difficult to have a sense of our groundedness within the natural order. Now, when we read Scripture, that means that much of Scripture is strange to us. It's difficult for us to think in terms of such a reality. Now, how do we overcome this? I think in part, we first have to begin by understanding where we're standing. These are all things that we are thinking from. We're not actually thinking about these things a lot. For many of us, it's like a fish thinking about water. This is just the reality that we swim in. It's a reality in which things are interchangeable, a reality where everything is measured by money, by abstract technique, where things are mass-produced, where objects are interchangeable. If you look in your environment, how many things within your environment have a unique particularity to them? How many of them are not mass-produced? Very few of them. And that changes the way that we look at the world. And so as our challenge as Christians, particularly as we read Scripture, is to imaginatively re-inhabit a world which is very different to our own. a world in which particularity has salience and significance, a world in which a particular people, a particular place, a particular story has weight that has significance for the destiny of the whole of the human race, for the whole of the cosmos.